Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Superhero Finder podcast. As always, I'm your host, Matt Wilson, and I've been scouring the cosmos looking for inspirational stories and people doing some really incredible things in our communities. And whether you're here to learn something for yourself or whether maybe you're going to take something away to teach somebody else, whatever you're here for, thank you. And I'm delighted to be in the Matt Cave today with Amanda Hanusch-Moore. How are you doing, Amanda?
I'm all right, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. It's always good to have a fellow Northerner in the room with me. It's always, we've been across the world. We've had people in Canada, we've had people in all sorts of countries, but a fellow Northerner and actually quite local. So where are you based, Amanda?
I'm based up at Northallerton, up in North Yorkshire, but I am a true West Yorkshire person. So yeah, definitely representing the North today.
Yeah, absolutely. And for anyone that doesn't know anything about yourself, they might get, if you're watching this on video, you might get a little bit of a clue by what Amanda's wearing. But would you like to just introduce a little bit about what is it that you do? Who's Amanda?
So I work for North Yorkshire Police. I'm a police sergeant with North Yorkshire Police, and I have been for the last nearly 14 years. So I started my career as a response officer, and then went on to neighbourhoods. I spent some time as well as the operational lead for hate crime for North Yorkshire Police. And now I am based in safeguarding as the violence against women and girls sergeant. So I don't have a particular area where I police. I cover the whole of North Yorkshire, which is a pretty large area because North Yorkshire is a very, very big county. And I work with a DCI, and we essentially work across the force to implement the VAWG strategy, which came from the National VAWG Task Force, which I was lucky to be on for a year last year as a part of the VAWG Task Force. So that's basically me. That's what I do.
North Yorkshire is a huge county to have.
It is, yeah.
Two people really kind of heading that up. Is it not one of the biggest counties in the country?
It is. It's not the biggest policing county. I think that honour goes down to maybe Devon and Cornwall or one of the Welsh forces, but we certainly are one of the biggest counties, and we are very rural as well. So most of our, unlike West Yorkshire, which is much smaller, but it's very, very urban. It's got large cities, Leeds and Bradford. Our biggest city will be York, and then we have Scarborough, Harrogate, and they're all based at the bottom of the county. But predominantly our force is incredibly rural. We've got the Yorkshire Dales and the Yorkshire Wolds, and we've got the East Coast. So with Scarborough, which is a tourist area, which many people come and visit, obviously in the summer months. So yeah, we cover a massive geographical area. So yeah, it's a pretty big area to stretch. It can take several hours to get from one end of the county to the other, and it's not an easy drive either as well. It's often through rural villages and rural roads, and certainly during the winter months it can be pretty difficult to get across.
Yeah, pretty hairy at times, I bet.
Yeah.
What? So I mean, this is awesome to have somebody that's dedicated on looking at violence against women and girls, which is a massive thing. And anyone that knows me, that's been following me, will know that I champion a lot of this work, and I try and speak up as a man in this realm, because it's really important that we have these conversations. What main things do you kind of do? What main things is your role to do within the communities? What things will people see? What things will people see and hear about that you do?
So one of the things really at the moment is one of the things I'm championing is the White Ribbon organisation, which a lot of people may have heard of because it's a national charity, and I know that a lot of organisations have already signed up for it. So West Yorkshire Police have been signed up as a White Ribbon organisation for quite some time, and it's something that North Yorkshire Police have just signed up for and become accredited for, and it's something that I'm really driving within North Yorkshire Police. primarily because, policing hasn't had the best reputation with regards to trust and confidence. And it's something that is a part of the VAWG strategy. It's part of the national VAWG strategy, is rebuilding trust and confidence in policing. And interestingly, I was having this conversation yesterday. So yesterday I was with IDAS, which is the Independent Domestic Abuse Service that runs, they are commissioned by our office, police and crime commissioner. They work in North Yorkshire, they work in South Yorkshire as well, in and around Barnsley. And we were having this conversation about how policing are trying to make changes. And I think policing has recognised that we are an organisation which will attract certain types of men, and certain types of men who will abuse that power, and thus ever was. But there is a cultural issue at play, and policing recruits from society. And if society is misogynistic, or if there is a misogynistic strand through society, then we are recruiting from that culture. So we really need to ensure that we have the right checks and balances in place, that if we identify these type of people, that we're getting rid of them. And we're not hiding behind, we're not brushing things under the carpet that perhaps we have done in the past, that we are getting rid of anyone who immediately displays any kind of inappropriate, bad behaviour. Which I think is why we're seeing a lot more coming to the surface. We're seeing these reports of officers being kicked out of forces because they're getting, the checks and balances are coming into effect. And forces are being robust. Now, I'm sure that people go, well, that should have been always like that. Well, it hasn't been, but it is now. I've always had this concern that, and rightly so, the police are the people who should be put on a pedestal, because we are the ones who enforce the law. We should be the ones that are kind of judged more harshly. But equally, I think we need to look at other organisations as well, and such as other emergency services, and say, actually, we need to hold everyone to account. And are we doing that? Because misogyny, wherever there are people, and whether there are men, misogyny is going to exist. And are we keeping women safe when they go for emergency medical treatment? Are we keeping women safe when they go to the doctors or to A&E? Are we keeping women safe when safe and well checks are being done, when anyone's going to their property? So I think we've got to be really mindful of that halos and horns effect. Well, every police officer is really, really bad, but these people aren't, because they're not police officers. Actually, we need to look at the whole view of, if culture is misogynistic, then we're going to be recruiting people from every part of culture. And I think that's kind of a long route to say, White Ribbon looks at culture as a whole, and it looks at behaviour as a whole, and how we need to change. We need to look at those men who are really positive role models, and who are really, really looking to change behaviours. And they need to be in every single organisation, because they need to be the kind of the eyes and ears and the positive role models within the fire service, within the NHS, within teaching, to kind of be a model for men and young boys to say, this isn't how you behave as a man. This is wrong, and they need to be the models for good behaviour, certainly at a young age, so that we don't have this culture of misogynistic behaviour that runs through from boyhood into manhood.
No, absolutely. There's a couple of things just going back to what you just said there, because it's almost as if it's And it's really hard to see and a really bitter pill to swallow, but it's, if more people are being called out, if more officers are being called out for the behaviour, for the conduct, then one, from my knowledge and from yours as well, I'm sure you'll understand this and many people will, it means there's more being reported, which
Yeah,
is one of the biggest hurdles anyway, especially against a police force or a kind of force of authority. But then also, like you said, it's being recognised, or it's being taken more seriously. It's being recognised that this is bad and wrong behaviour.
yeah,
This is how we should be acting. This is how we need to be acting. And it's, I think sometimes the problem is we focus so much on the negative. We don't actually point out all the good people out there that are doing the things the
yeah,
way. You know, because you can speak to people on the street. We'll take away social media. You speak to anyone on the street and say, what's your experience been with the police, for example? And you'll have, I would say, at least 5 or 6 out of 10 that would probably go, yeah, it's been all right, or I've not really
yeah,
had that much to do with. You'll have maybe one go, oh, really, really positive, they really helped me, and you'll probably have 3 go, idiots. You know, what for whatever. And there's always 2 sides to a story, whatever. But that shows you that we'd like that number, that one person that had a nice, good experience, that felt safe, that felt looked after. You'd like that to be a bigger number rather than just
yeah,
oh, it was okay.
yeah. And I think no, good news doesn't sell either.
No.
So bad news always sells, and also, you know, and I learned this from when I was the hate crime lead. Data and figures often don't tell the right story. So with hate crime, you know, sometimes low figures. So actually, you didn't want to see low figures. You wanted to see figures increase, because that showed that people had the confidence to report. So if we had low reporting figures to police regarding hate crime, that wasn't telling us that actually no hate crime happened here. Actually, there could be a significant number of hate crime instances taking place in an area. It just meant that they weren't reporting it to us. So what we wanted to see was an increase in the hate crime figures, because that would tell us that actually people felt more confident. It's a similar situation with domestic abuse. Whether, you know, if figures are rising, does that mean that actually things are getting worse, or does it mean that people are more confident in reporting domestic abuse to police because they have more trust in the police? We see more reports of police officers for misconduct in areas such as, you know, sexual misconduct, but that does that mean there are more officers doing it, or does it mean that we're just getting better at identifying those officers and getting rid of them? Ideally, we don't want anyone in the force who's behaving in that manner, but we are identifying those officers who shouldn't be, and people perhaps within the policing family are actually not tolerating that kind of behaviour anymore. It's that question of, once upon a time, was it just, oh, it's just so and so, that's what they're like, or it's just the word banter, it's just banter. But actually now people are going, actually that's not acceptable. I don't want to hear that kind of language. I don't want to see that kind of behaviour within policing. I'm reporting them and it's being dealt with. I still think, you know, we're always going to have, I'd like to think that one day we won't have to have, you know, this kind of behaviour is not going to happen. But unfortunately, we see through the likes of Andrew Tate and that shift in behaviour, and, you know, the evidence shows that within schools, and the work that Soundproof Box are doing, that we see that behaviour within schools, and we've identified it ourselves within schools in North Yorkshire, that there is that change, or that drift towards young people and their understanding of what a healthy relationship is. That there is an influence around social media about how boys and girls see healthy relationships, and how boys see their role in society and how that plays with their interactions with females, either their peers or female teachers or female older women, and their interactions with them. And as they get older, how's that going to play in the roles that they want to do in life and the behaviours that they want to display?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've seen a shift. I think that there's always been influencers, but I think the word is bandied around a lot more, and it's because it's more direct. I mean, we all spent 18 months, most of us, in lockdown, or you maybe homeschooled and stuff like that, in front of screens where there were people coming up on that really wasn't your choice whether you saw them, but if you interacted more, it was believed that you wanted to see more. So you have people like Andrew Tate becoming big, creating videos talking about being really successful and all this other stuff, but having these misogynistic attitudes towards women. And then we talked about the red pill movement. So
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
podcasts that have these really, really strong statements that are quite derogatory towards women as well. And, it is something that's really difficult because the world does change. Now, I do speak to quite a lot of people through social media and through TikTok and through the community we're building, but it's normal for a lot of young people nowadays to share passwords to phones. Now, that might be because actually we want to share where we are, but that makes it much easier for somebody that has the wrong intentions to then do these things. And I think we also, as a movement, the kind of white ribbon or whatever you're doing, whatever I'm doing, we need to make sure that we're moving with the times, with the generation, because as you say, the most important work comes with, and the work for the long term comes with changing those attitudes from being young, doesn't it? It's how you
yeah,
perceive almost your family's views. We might not be able to change the family, we can try, but actually if we start with the young people and go, look, this is what's healthy, this is unhealthy, this is what you don't want, this is how you can identify it and allow those people to make those own decisions, empower them to be able to do that. That's how we're going to get the change. But when I found out people were passing passwords over to each other and happily, giving all this detail out about, it's like, that's the opposite of what we've ever been told to do.
yeah. And funny, that was new to me. Interestingly, again, this so yesterday at Harrogate Police Station we had the High Sheriff of North Yorkshire come, a lady called Claire Granger, and she met with some of our domestic abuse officers and IDAS who came, and basically for her to understand more what our domestic abuse officers did and what IDAS did. And we were having that exact conversation about young people and how their attitude to, again, safety online, and that it is, one of the domestic abuse officers was saying it's just normal for for young people, if they're in a relationship, that they will share the password with a boyfriend or girlfriend, and that is just normal behavior, because once they're in that relationship, that's that's just the thing to do. And yeah, you're right, that would be, I would never even consider that. But that the problematic issues around that then everything's online, everything's open, and everything's shared. And it's a really different, because it's such a different culture to, and I'm nowhere near being a teenager anymore. So it's, I need to have that conversation with them. It's beyond my age, kind of age now, to even know what it's like to be a teenager and have that understanding of what it's like in that kind of digital sphere where everything happens online, where all your world is online.
Yeah, it certainly does change, and I think the last couple of years has been a big lesson for me. And as much as I like to say I feel like a big kid, so I don't feel actually any older than when I was maybe in my late teens, 20s, but actually I am. I'm out of touch with a lot of things I felt like I was at the cutting edge of. But what it does is, I think it blurs those lines. So for example, we see it in TV programs, right? Somebody knowing someone's password, and while they're in the toilet looking through the phone because they might be jealous or something, they might be looking through to see if there's any suspicious messages. Now breaking privacy, right? That's somebody else's thing, somebody else's identity, their stuff's in there, their information's in there. Whereas if it's all shared and opened anyway, as a given, then where's that line? Then you've then got to be good at spotting the signs of somebody doing it for the wrong reason, which is harder.
Yeah.
But that's maybe where the focus is and where the really important stuff is. It's that awareness, isn't it? It's that emotional awareness, that I suppose emotional intelligence as well, to be able to go, something's not right.
Yeah, yeah. And I think this is really difficult as well. Again, it goes back to, you know, one of the things about White Ribbon is about being an ambassador and being a champion, and also being an active, you know, we talk about active bystanders and all the work around being a bystander, or an active bystander. But I think the difficulty is sometimes, you know, especially for young people, is do they know what they're looking out for? Because when everything becomes normalized or normalized behavior, then, you know, how do you identify the red flags if it's not a red flag for you to behave like that? If it's not a red flag for, you know, a partner, you know, your boyfriend to take your phone off you, to make sure that they're, you know, if they're checking your phone to see who you've been speaking to, if that's just normal because everyone else does it, then how do you identify, you know, what's a normal, healthy relationship and what's not? Because if everything you see is, you know, within social media, that's what you expect a relationship to be like, then it's really hard to see anything else as being different. And that's the real, and again, it kind of goes back to then, you know, when teenagers then become adults, then you know, again, it's that kind of, this culture, it expands, doesn't it, to when they, you know, have kids or when they enter the workforce. We still have this culture of, you know, this misogynistic culture or this oppressive culture towards women, that continues, and we don't, and it kind of self-perpetuates.
It does, and what it screams for me is, and it's something still that challenges me to this day, but it's, as that active bystander, knowing either that something's wrong in principle, whether it feels wrong to you or not, or it's knowing what you can do to help that person. But first and foremost, it's identifying that somebody in that interaction is not happy or is being harmed, regardless of whether it's right or not. You look at somebody and they're crying, oh, well, that was right to do that, because, and I'm going slightly off on a whim here, if we come from a society that used to smack kids, right, and I'm just going to say it like that because, and then a child would cry and that would be just for that to go on. And I don't think that's a conversation we need to go into, but if that's starting at a young level, then how do we know? It almost feels like a British thing to go, oh, you know, they might just be having an argument. She might have done this, they might have done that. And then you just don't know. And then you're like, well, I don't want to get involved, because when actually there's somebody that's not very happy over there and you just want to make sure they're okay.
Yeah, and I think that there is that, they will always find a reason not to engage. Oh, well, they must be just tired, or they must be just, you know, best leave them alone. They won't want me interfering. And I think that's where, you know, a lot of the work I've done with the cadets, so I'm a cadet leader as well, and obviously I'm an ex-teacher, is about, you know, that kind of, there's lots of ways that we can engage with someone as an active bystander. That doesn't necessarily mean getting hands-on. So we don't have to, you know, if we see a difficult situation and we're worried about that, well, actually it could put me in danger, well, then don't take that option. There are other ways that you can help that won't necessarily put you in danger, because I know that's a lot of the reasons why people don't want to get involved. It's like, well, I don't want to get my head kicked in, or, well, you know what happened to so-and-so. It's like, well, fine. But okay, if you see someone that's upset, then just go over and go, are you okay? Because that might be the only thing they need. They may yet say, yes, I'm fine. But the fact that you've gone over and said, are you okay? Or is there someone I can call? Or is there something I can get for you? Do you want a glass of water?
Yeah.
anything that just shows that human engagement with someone, and that they feel validated, that it's almost like saying, I see you and I see what's happened, maybe the only thing that's necessary. And it doesn't take a lot to do that, because some people, it's that kind of British thing of, I feel a bit embarrassed.
Yeah.
I'm a bit embarrassed to get involved. Well, that's fine, but it might be just if you go past and give, or even smile at them and just go, are you okay?
Yeah.
Just that, it's just that I feel, that makes that person feel validated. Because going back to my hate crime head, a lot of hate crime victims, if it happens on a bus or public transport, which a lot of hate crime instances do, it's the fact that people just pretend nothing's happened.
Yeah.
So they'll all sit there while someone's being racially abused, and they'll just ignore, they'll just like look anywhere other than when it's happened. And a lot of victims say, I just wanted someone to acknowledge what had happened.
Yeah.
And even if it was just, are you okay? Do you want me to see you off the bus, or
yeah,
do you want me to call the police? So it doesn't take much. And again, I think going back to the white ribbon, a lot of the time, especially if we're looking at misogyny, and especially if you're a woman watching something else happen, misogyny by its very definition is, frightening, because it's the hatred of women. And if you're a woman seeing a man behave in that manner, you may not feel comfortable in standing up, which is why white ribbon is all about men being the upstanders, men standing up to men. But again, it's that you don't have to be all gung-ho about it and all be like, oh, okay, I'm, chest beating. It's just about saying, I see you, I see what's happening, and I'm gonna say something, or I'm gonna go over and say, are you okay? Do you want me to do something about it? Can I get you something? But I've seen what's happened. Because a lot of the time we're more than happy to just look the other way and pretend nothing's gone on and everything's fine. And that's what we need to stop doing.
Yeah. It's just, can't say any more than that. Yes, it's that not knowing what to say, not wanting to get involved, that almost fear factor. Can we realize that every little thing that we do, if more of us do it, will have a huge impact.
Yeah.
And even after the fact as well. So when it comes to friends, because that adds another layer of complexity, friends and family. And when you see it within those social circles, there's then worries about being cast out, or worries about people, what they might think of you because you stand up for it, kind of thing. Or what are questions around what's normal. But that becomes even more pertinent, because actually after the fact, could you reach out to the person that was the victim in that case, or the person that was, that was upset by that, and go, are you okay? Because yes, there's the thing about the importance of being seen at the time and being seen, but actually it's afterwards. It's that feeling of being left alone. Why do I still feel like this? And I feel like nobody understands.
Yeah.
That's still just as important, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think so. I think it's that recognition that you're not on your own. And also because a lot of the time, especially with verbal abuse, and this comes into the work I did around my master's around language and the use of language. You might hear something and you'd be really like, that's really upsetting, that's really upset me. But then everyone else around you is going, oh, it's just banter. Oh, oh, what are you getting so upset about for? Why are you so upset? Well, if that language is impacted on you and has made you upset, but everyone else is telling you you shouldn't be, then you're almost questioning your own sanity. And it's almost like gaslighting there. Well, should I be upset about it? Because no one else is telling me it's banter and I shouldn't get so worked up. So it is that kind of, if you can support someone and go, actually, if that's really upset you, then you've got every right to feel validated in your emotion, because it's that kind of I always used to say, especially when I was a teacher, if someone gets hit, and it's the same with hate crime, physical abuse, you can see it, you can see the bruises, but verbal abuse is much harder, because it's those microaggressions. It's that kind of constant chipping away at your very being. That really kind of is insidious, because you're left questioning, sometimes, if it's really subtle as well. And certainly with misogyny, it's that kind of, unless it's really out there, kind of the real derogatory language, sometimes it's just that kind of, I'm told it's banter, but actually this is really grinding me down. That kind of office kind of jokes, and it's like, well, it's not. This is really, 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 really getting to me. And that's the kind of, if you see it and you hear it, well, actually, and you agree, then support someone who's going through it.
To let them know that actually they're not weird for being upset. The rest of the world isn't against them. It's almost, if we can in those instances go, forget about whether that person should be angry at that woman, forget about whether that person should be upset or not, forget about whether I feel like I should be upset or be offended by what I've just heard. I am. She is. He is. So how do I act based on actually what is happening? Because should is based around somebody else's expectations, isn't it? So it doesn't always feel intrinsically right. So I think, maybe that'd be one tip from me, to try and filter out all that. If you're feeling something or you're seeing something, forget about whether it should be happening or shouldn't. It is. So what you do based on if that was the only information, because often, as any emergency services, that will be the only information you have. If you're going out to or something, this is happening. We don't know why yet, but we'll find out. That's unimportant, isn't it?
Yeah.
I wonder. Sorry, go on. That's all right.
I was going to say, the chances are, if that behaviour is happening to one person, it's happened to others as well. They just haven't spoken out about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the more that we do speak out about it, the more that it does get reported, then figures will go up, like you said, but it's figured reported that are going up. The actual occurrence we know is already higher, but we're not just them figures. It's just we want them to be closer and more active of the situation, don't we? Now, this has absolutely flown. It's saying we've only got a couple of minutes left, so there's a couple of things I want to ask you, Amanda, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
If there's anybody listening today that is either maybe experiencing something, knows somebody that's experiencing something around kind of violence against women, domestic abuse, or anything about that, from your experience, could you give them any tips on what to do? I know it's a big question.
It is. I would. There's loads of people out there who can support, and depending on where they are, obviously, if they don't feel confident in calling the police straight away, there's loads of independent organisations. So if you live in North Yorkshire, there's IDAS, which is the Independent Domestic Abuse Service. They are completely independent of the police. So that means that you can self-refer into IDAS. You don't have to have spoken to the police to speak to IDAS. IDAS work with the police in the sense of, if the police, if there's a domestic incident that's being reported to the police, we can refer people to IDAS. Right. But you can also speak to IDAS independently. IDAS will not tell us anything, and they're entirely confidential. So there's no fear of, well, if I go to IDAS, they're going to tell the police and this and this is going to happen. So I would always say, if you are experiencing domestic abuse or any kind of sexual violence or sexual offence, they have what's called IDVAs, and they're independent domestic violence advisors, or ISVAs, who are independent sexual violence advisors, or contact any other charities like Women's Aid or Refuge, because they can give advice either online or on the telephone about taking those next steps, and they're entirely confidential. Speak to any organisation like that. West Yorkshire will have similar. If you're in immediate danger, then always call 999.
Yeah.
But there's definitely, don't suffer on your own. Don't suffer in silence. There are definitely organisations out there that can give you, even if it's just initial advice about how can I keep safe, you know, what steps can I take. They can give you advice about emergency bags if you need to leave the house in a hurry, or refuges, or just what you need to do to keep safe. But you know, the police will come and will support you. But I know sometimes that's not the first thing that you want to do. It's just, I need that support.
No, I think that's some really, really powerful and important advice, because like you say, sometimes there can be a blocker, or there can be a fear around telling the police, because you don't know what the implications are going to be from there on.
Yeah,
there are services
definitely
out there that are separate. There's a lot of services out there that are separate, and I've Googled a few for people when they've been in situations, and you know, there are places that will look after you or will support you without that, without getting in touch with the police being a step. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, and they will kind of support you if you do want to go to the police.
Yeah.
And they will kind of give you that guidance, and if you do decide that that's what you want to do, that they can kind of be that support with you. But I would, you know, as I say, I do reiterate, if you are, you know, at risk, or is there a risk of life, you know, danger to life, or you need help immediately, then do call 999, do get the police there.
Yeah.
Because you know, we will come and we will support you, and we will look after you. So don't put yourself at risk by not calling us.
Yeah, incredibly important. Now, I have a little tradition on this podcast, and I want to change the tone ever so slightly. Now, this is the Superhero Finder podcast, and I love superheroes. I don't hide that fact. But I would love to know, and this is for you, not Sergeant. Okay, this is for Amanda. Okay. If you could have any superhero power in the world, what would it be? What would you use it for?
Oh, see, I thought about it. See, I'd really like to fly.
Okay.
I've always kind of harboured but then I'd probably, knowing me, I'd probably kind of fly into the side of a building.
I mean, yeah, unless you go higher than the building.
Yeah, no, I think I'm going to stick with the superhero power that I've always wanted to do, and that's fly.
Flying.
But I know I'd use it to just get places quicker.
Yeah.
So I can do more. But yeah, I've always wanted to fly.
There we go. You see, I'd be terrible at flying. Flying's a very common answer, but I'd be terrible at flying because I'm terrible with heights. So I feel like I would literally I would either get over it the first time I flew, or I would just permanently be in a state of adrenaline, and I'd just get to the other end and I'd just be asleep.
No, so, I'd love to fly.
Yes, I think it would be incredible, and some of our favourite superheroes fly. So thank you for taking the time to answer that for me. And thank you for taking the time out today as well, Amanda. I think it's really important that, especially, not only do we have these conversations about this subject type, but also someone of yourself in an organisation like the police, like North Yorkshire Police, actually been able to almost bridge the gap between some of the misnomers, some of the stories that we see in the headlines, and some of them that aren't very good. And it's nice to be able to see. It's nice to see from my point of view what's being done. And when I found out there was a VAWG officer, I was like, what? Like, that's incredible. And do you know, is that across every force, or is that a North Yorkshire thing?
Every force will have a strategic and tactical lead for VAWG, and they're usually every force will have like an ACC who is the kind of the strategic lead for VAWG, and every force will have a tactical lead for VAWG, which is usually at DCI level, so Detective Chief Inspector, and then a few forces now have Inspector Sergeant who will kind of be like the VAWG operational lead. So a few forces are starting to have that at that level, just to kind of do the kind of more operational side of it and try and get things kind of more embedded with regards to having officers understand what VAWG is, because there's still that kind of lack of understanding of what VAWG is, even with the public. You know, when I say I'm a VAWG sergeant, they're kind of like, oh, what's VAWG? So it's really trying to embed that kind of understanding of what VAWG is and what we're doing about violence against women and girls.
So if you are listening to this, do us a favour, and if you didn't know what VAWG was today, and even if you did know, tell a few other people what VAWG is. Just, you know, that's how we can dispel the knowledge. We just need to pass it on, don't we, and just make it more visible. And that's been kind of a long-running theme in what we've been saying today. Thank you very much for your time. Is there a possibility of anyone contacting you with any questions, or is that not a thing? Would you prefer people contact the services?
Probably best that they contact the services, but certainly I'm more than happy to talk about White Ribbon, and if anyone wants to get involved with White Ribbon, and if any organisations out there, certainly within in and around North Yorkshire, want to contact me about White Ribbon and how they can become involved with White Ribbon, we're looking. We've just started the journey at North Yorkshire. So any organisations that are White Ribbon accredited, or any organisations or groups that are interested in supporting White Ribbon and supporting us, you know, I've done lots of talks and presentations on White Ribbon. I'm more than happy to do that. So yeah, they can contact me with regards to that. I'm happy to give my work email with regards to White Ribbon.
That's great. Well, if that's okay, then I'll put that in the description. I'll put your work email in the description. That'd be amazing. And yeah, great. Yeah, I've got a couple of people that I want to actually introduce you to as well. So I'll do that over email as well. I think that'd be really.
Yeah, no problem.
And guys, thank you. The kitten's just jumped on my glass of juice right at the end. She's been fine all the way through. She just decided she wants to just kibosh everything. Thank you, Plum. Guys, thank you for listening. Amanda, thank you for being here. And as always, guys, if you're watching this on video, awesome. You can see the links that are behind me. You can keep in touch with me. If you're just listening, then there is my Patreon, patreon.com/thekindeststrongman. And it does allow, I've got a couple of patrons, Lucy and James, who are amazing. And they just help me to keep this podcast running, because it doesn't make any money. It's not for profit. It literally is just to get these messages out. So if you do fancy doing something like that, then, you know, have a look on there. If not, cool, just maybe give this a share for me. Look out for it on social media and check out some of the older episodes as well, because this is episode 114, I think, because my memory is terrible. So that means there's loads of stuff, loads of different conversations. And that leads me to say, I've got a little catchphrase as well, because I'm a big kid. I've said I'm a big kid before, Anna. So from myself and from Anna, everybody that's out there, stay super.